This is Dion Blumenrader with Big Hoss One Sauce, and you're listening to the best show on all things barbecue with my man, Greg Rempe.
Start the game! Let's go!
We'll do it live. Okay. Well, do it live! I'll write it and we'll do it live!
So to get that perfect barbecue, you use wood. Are you sure it's safe? Whatever. We put the lighter fluid on, strike your match, and... Oh! Should we call the fire department? That might be a good idea.
And welcome to the really big Barbecue Central show. This is the show that originates from the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame city, Bomb City, USA, Cleveland, Ohio, the barbecue capital of the North Coast. I'm your program host, Greg Rempe. Happy to have you aboard here on your Tuesday evenings live fire fun and frivolity show. If you would like to get in contact with the show this evening, or you would like to follow the show during off-show hours, here's how you do all that.
You can get in touch with the show by sending an email to Greg at bbqcentralshow.com. Follow us on all the social media channels at BBQ Central Show. And be sure to subscribe to the show podcast feed on your favorite podcast platform.
Anything else you want to find out about the show can be found at the main website, thebbqcentralshow.com. And here's what's happening in case you get the newsletter coming up in about 12 minutes from now. A quarterly guest and the creator of the most heavily trafficked barbecue and grilling website on the face of the earth, back for his last turn in 2025. Meathead is here. Boy, is there a litany of items that we are going to try and jam-pack into over his 18 minutes here this evening. So stay tuned for that. After Meathead, we'll be joined by monthly guest, Robert Moss. Lots to talk about with Robert as well. His last turn in 2025 on top of Meathead's last turn in 2025. Get on, you little crazy mongrel. And then, where'd he go? Oh, you hit that button, little monkey. And then, that will bring a close to the first hour. We move to the second hour, where we will find one of the co-founders of Fireboard, Ted Conrad, joins the show. So we'll be getting a business recap from Fireboard as far as what 2025 has looked like. If you are a follower of this show, and you especially follow the third Tuesday of every month, you know that Wes Wright is constantly reporting on a whole bunch of business stuff. This has not been a great year for the folks in live fire. It hasn't been a great year for me as far as the live fire stuff is being evaluated, especially from a revenue sense. 2024, best year ever. 2025, worst year ever.
Get that big stuff out of here.
I hate it when you go from the top and then to the bottom. Not even a gradual fall. It was a horrific, breakneck, Hindenburg-like flaming descent for the show from a business perspective here. But things change, and the way business is conducted is changing, and lots that we could talk about that we're not going to talk about unless you're interested at some point. So that's what's happening here this evening. Meathead, Robert Moss, first hour, which is a stupendous first hour. Ted Conrad in the second hour. Don't forget you can follow me socially. Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, Snapchat, LinkedIn, all with the handle at BBQ Central Show. And we say good evening to those of you watching tonight through one of our video streaming platforms. You can go to facebook.com/BBQ Central Show, or you can watch on YouTube, which is youtube.com/@BBQ Central Show. And we have a new Would You Rather YouTube poll question of the week. And we're asking everybody this, including all guests. Would you rather have no eyebrows? Would you rather have an extra finger? And currently, 57% of you are saying you would rather have no eyebrows. My 2 cents between the two. I'm also going no eyebrows. While it would seem to be a more aesthetically easier malconformity to have an extra digit, all of a sudden nitrile gloves or any gloves or perhaps some certain size mittens become a problem. Also, if anybody really starts looking at your hand, they're going to think something looks off. They're going to start counting fingers. Now you're going to have to talk about that. No eyebrows, that can be a bit alarming, especially if you don't also have hair. Maybe you're suffering from alopecia of some form or fashion. I've known a handful of people over my years that have had alopecia, and they are very smooth looking, but it's something that, after 2 weeks' time, you don't even think about it. And it's exceptionally hard to hide an extra finger. I happen to have a cosmetologist in the house at this point, so I just need to trot downstairs and have her draw on some eyelashes, winner, eyebrows for dinner. So between the two, and now 62% of you are saying you would rather forego the eyebrows in lieu of getting an extra finger, but we'll see what Meathead and Robert Moss and Ted Conrad have to say about that. The results from last week's Would You Rather poll: would you rather eat PB&J or grilled cheese every day? And 67% of you are foregoing health and deciding that grilled cheese is the way to go. Again, while my heart and mind say grilled cheese as well, I would like to also live past year 2. But perhaps when stricken with the only options of eating for the rest of your life being grilled cheese or PB&J, maybe you don't want to go for longevity at that point. You just want to go for flavor. So we'll start here this evening. And gang, I'm torn on this one. Al Fragoni came on the show last week. By the way, if you missed it, you should go back, listen to it on podcast. Did a dynamite interview. Spoke a bit on his thoughts of an open fire competition circuit launching on a national scale. And if I understood him correctly, not as a standalone like Al Fragoni's live fire competition circuit. Or at least not at first. Instead, it sounded like it was going to be a bolt-on to another existing event, much like how the SCA got going when they were bolting on to KCBS events. And then the KCBS decided in their ultimate wisdom that they could do it better. They were going to do their own state competition because they saw how popular the SCA was at their events. The SCA flourished, and KCBS's idea of doing their own stake events never even got off the ground. Put them on the ground. Anyway, my concern for the whole Al Fragoni open fire competition thing is this. I don't really know how many people in general are really looking to compete in this way. Competition style barbecue. I know where it's grown to where we're at here in 2025, but 10 and 15 and even 20 years ago, it was a little bit different monster. But I don't know how many people are really looking to cook open fire competition. In fact, I will say that in this instance, I believe that there are more people who would rather go and watch this thing than actually cook in this thing. Just my hot take. Time will tell. But I think a big temperature taker on this one is going to be what happens at this coming year's Memphis in May event. Remember, Memphis and May breaking their standard operations and now including the Memphis and May Open Fire World Championships. Again, not going to be a competitor or not going to get you on stage to go against also whole hog, pork, or ribs to be a potential world champion. But you will be a Memphis and May world champion if you take part in that open fire competition. Look, one thing is undeniable here. Al Fragoni, one of the most passionate cooks and businessmen out there in the industry today. And above all else, and I'm saying this here on record at 9:10 on December 9th, 2025, I plan on having more Al Fragoni in 2026. How about that? Hold me to that, because Al is a delight. By the way, I didn't know he had such a southern accent. Gang, if you could only smell what is happening down here. In my years of being down here, I have never been so assaulted in my life from an olfactory emanation standpoint. This is offensive, to say the least. You mother effers. All right, before we get to Meathead, are you looking for more smoke flavor out of your pellet cooker? Because let's be honest, sometimes it's more like a fancy oven. You want the stick burner flavor, you don't want the stick burner work. Who does? Unless you're enjoying tending fires all day long and smelling like a campfire for up to a week. Look no further than the Smokin' Pecan Pellets. Smokin' Pecan Pellets are made out of 100% pecan shells, that's right. Nothing but pecan shells. No fillers, no binders, no artificial flavor enhancers. Your meat will thank you. Your wallet might too after you realize you're not paying for sawdust. Smokin' Pecan Pellets are premium cooking pellets that burn hotter, last longer. And that means your pellet smoker will consume less pellets compared to most pellet brands. More time to relax, less time refilling the pellet hopper. It's practically a mini vacation. Their pecan shell pellets have a robust flavor that pairs well with a variety of meats, including beef and pork and chicken and fish. Even your weird Aunt Mildred, who only eats boiled chicken, to only be then run through a microwave oven to make sure it's just right, might actually enjoy this. Get the smoke, burn the shells. It's a lifestyle. Promo code for 10% off when you visit smokinpecan.com, and that's an SMOKIN, smokinpecan.com. It's BBQ Central at checkout. That's the promo code, BBQ Central. Because who doesn't love a good discount, especially when it comes to delicious barbecue? I know I do. I do. Again, 10% off each and every time you visit smokinpecan.com and order your Smokin' Pecan Pellets. The code BBQ Central. It's just that easy. Please do it, won't you? 10%. Free money. Once again, the website smokinpecan.com, and we are back with Meathead from AmazingRibs.com right after this. Stick around. We'll be right back.
You're listening to the BBQ Central Show. Broadcasting live from the BBQ Central Show studios in Cleveland, Ohio. You're listening to the BBQ Central Show. Once again, here's your host, Greg Rempe.
Brutality, the likes I have never seen before in my life. This portion of the show is brought to you by Fireboard, makers of Fireboard 2, Fireboard Pro, Fireboard Spark, Fireboard Beacon, and of course the wireless Fireboard Pulse. When you use the Fireboard app, you have total access to all devices anywhere in the world. Visit more or find out more by visiting fireboard.com or call 816-945-2232. My first guest tonight has created the most heavily trafficked barbecue and grilling website on Barbecue Earth. A best-selling author? Check. A Barbecue Hall of Famer? Check. And more importantly than all of that, a Barbecue Central Show's guest Hall of Famer? Check. We are back for the last time in 2025 with our pal Meathead. Meathead, we have a would you rather YouTube poll question of the week. Would you rather
We haven't got time for this, Bull.
What are you talking about?
We got a lot of topic to cover.
Go ahead.
We are going to talk tonight, and the limited time allotted, rather than eyebrows. I have been hanging around social media since it was invented, and I am freaking out by how freaked out the public is over our food supply. And they are throwing words around that they don't understand. So I thought what I would do with you tonight is explain some of the terminology that is so badly misused and misunderstood.
I see you all the time out on there on the Twitter box, and I fear for you, Meathead, that you are... I have almost just stopped going on Twitter. I think I go on Twitter to see what you're doing, and then I immediately jump off of it, and I'm like, oh, Meathead's interacting with Gen Pop again. He should stop doing that. Get on, you stupid cat! So I said, let's go ahead and see what Meathead's up to, and oh dear Lord, I mean, it's just... I don't even know if I can handle it anymore. But you seem to be able to discern it to some degree. So what are like the biggest terms that people are throwing around and that are also wrong?
Yeah, we hear a lot of people, and they look at stuff. I saw today a woman who held up a tomato that she'd cut open, and there were white squiggly things in there. And they were, in fact, just the tomato seeds that had sprouted. They were tomato sprouts. But she was freaking out, and the public jumped in there, and they were saying, oh, it's some sort of parasite. It's some sort of worms.
Right.
For crying out loud. People, first of all, let me tell you this. Nothing you will eat will kill you faster than worrying about what you eat.
Correct.
Relax. Your food supply is generally safe. There are some things that we can do to improve it. And I know that I try to avoid politics, and I really try to avoid the subject of health because it's not very well understood. But I want to describe, first of all, let's go through some of the terms that we are hearing bandied about so much. Raw food, minimally processed, ultra processed, junk food, hybrids, crossbreeds, bioengineered, GMO, lab grown. People are saying, oh, that's lab grown. That's lab grown. I mean, I saw somebody with a turkey leg, and he was peeling the skin, and it was very rubbery. And she was saying it had to be lab grown. It wasn't real skin. Oh, for crying out loud, people. Manufactured food and 3D printed. 3D printed is popping up all over the place. All right, let's talk about these. First of all, raw food. It's just food that is in its raw, natural state. An apple, a carrot. It hasn't been cooked. If it's been cooked, if it's been marinated, it's not a raw food anymore.
Here's what I see most in social media across the platforms when it comes to raw milk. That's what's being pushed. You should be drinking raw milk. You should be consuming raw milk. Everything else is bad. And all I've ever heard prior to that was raw milk is bad for you. And here we are in 2025 where we have to question if the milk that I'm getting, normal milk, pasteurized, that I've drank for 51 years of my life, have I been cheating myself in some way, or am I drinking a more unhealthy milk that's pasteurized versus this raw milk? Should I be sucking on a cow's teat?
Look at let's go to the background right here. Cooking kills bacteria and parasites. Anything raw is, by definition, riskier than anything cooked.
Yep.
You will, if you cook food properly, you will not likely get sick from bacteria or parasites. If you eat something raw, the risk is higher. How much higher? That's a really interesting question. Cows walk around in grass and dirt. Their udders hang down low. They get dirty. There is bacteria and parasites in the dirt. The farmer is supposed to clean those teats thoroughly before they milk them. They're supposed to clean the milking machines thoroughly before they milk them. But it is more likely that raw milk will contain dangerous bacteria, not parasites, but dangerous bacteria, than if it's been pasteurized. Pasteurized is a very quick and simple process. It does not destroy the value of the milk. Now, we can go on for hours and I can get into great detail. The good news is the risk from raw milk is pretty low. The risk from raw steak or raw carrots is pretty low, but it's much higher than the risk from cooked food or processed food.
Is it a more healthier milk raw versus pasteurized?
Everything I've read. Now, let's preface this by saying I am not a scientist, but I am into science in a big way. Anybody who's looked at my books knows that they are loaded with science. I read a lot of science. I read a lot of research. I have scientists who advise me and edit my material. In fact, I sent you a copy of an article I'm writing on this very topic. And that is now being vetted by a microbiologist who happens to sleep in the bed next to me.
Conflict of interest.
Yeah, really. Okay, step up from raw food, minimally processed food. I got news for you. You're a food processor. So am I.
Yeah.
When I throw a steak on the grill, I am processing it. I am changing its chemical structure. I'm building a bark or a crust. I'm altering the proteins and the amino acids. I'm changing the amount of liquid. Some of it evaporates, drips off. Just washing food. A lot of lettuce and stuff is picked in the field and now it's raw, and then it's dunked in a bath with very low quantities of chlorine. Chlorine kills. Chlorine kills almost as well as cooking. Not quite. But chlorine is and it kills much better than vinegar. There's a lot of misinformation about there. Oh, you just wash it with vinegar. No, it doesn't work. Heat and chlorine are the two best pasteurizers, and heat better than chlorine. So very simple, minimal processing. Ceviche, which is raw fish, but it's marinated, and it's marinated with an acid and with salt. That's processing it. So minimally processed food includes just about everything that goes on in your kitchen. Butter is a minimally processed food. Salt is a minimally processed. Sugar, honey, pickles, canned fruits, roasted nuts. These are all minimally processed. They're pretty close to their natural state, but they have been processed. Okay, stepping up from that, we go into the world of ultra-processed and junk foods. And this is a very badly misinterpreted term. Ultra-processed foods are created by taking extracts from foods, modified ingredients, additives that are generally regarded to be safe. GRAS, that's the official term, with little or no with little or no whole food left in them. They're designed to be super tasty, and they're usually high in fat, high in salt, high in sugar, and they're cheap, convenient, and they are designed to have long shelf lives. This is the target of a lot of vitriol now, but it's badly misunderstood. It's not a very useful term. Potato chips, ultra processed food, wouldn't you think?
I would imagine.
Yeah, what's in there? Potatoes,
sugar,
salt, and oil.
Yeah.
But don't you fry potatoes at home? You get a frying pan out, you chop them up, you throw them in the frying pan with some cooking oil, and then when they're done, you salt them. That's the same thing that happens to potato chips. Why are potato chips ultra processed? They're a very simple, minimal processed. They belong in the minimally processed. So there are foods that we think are ultra processed that aren't. Now, when you start putting the barbecue flavor on it, when you start adding other, salt and vinegar flavors, now you're adding chemicals and you're pushing it into the ultra processed. The problem with ultra processed foods is that they have been associated with, now this is a very important term, associated with, not proven, but associated with disease, with type 2 diabetes, heart disease, some cancers, obesity. And we have to remember, correlation isn't causation. And this is a term that you'll hear scientists say, just because I have gray hair doesn't make me a barbecue expert. I happen to be a barbecue expert, but I got gray hair. The gray hair didn't make me a barbecue. That's correlation. Correlation doesn't make causation. So we don't know 100% for sure. And one of the problems is, and I've written at length about this when I rarely get into the subject of health, is that the way we gauge whether something is healthy or unhealthy is very sketchy. I can do a science experiment where I can take a piece of metal and test it and determine what it is made out of. But it's very, very hard for me to prove whether potato chips are healthy or not.
No, this is easy. All you do is go to your favorite food influencer, and then they tell you if it's good to eat or not. That's all you do.
This is what's maddening, is there are some people on social media who have credentials. There are some doctors, but doctors aren't scientists any more than I am. But there's a lot of 20-year-olds saying, don't eat this. It's not healthy. Don't eat that. Eat this. Here's how to get your heart in shape. Please, people, the most important thing I can leave you with right now is if you frequent social media like Twitter or Facebook, skip over every one of these guys with washboard apps talking about what's healthy and what's not. They don't know what the hell they're talking about, and their information comes from other influencers. So it's a vicious cycle. I read the science. I actually know how to read science papers, and I have scientists who I talk to.
Is the meatless category that was really big a couple of years ago. That's ultra processed food, right?
You mean things like
Impossible Burger, Beyond Beef,
yes,
blah blah.
The Impossible Burger and the others, which have worked their way into. Now, this is the next category: lab grown foods. This is there's no meat in the Impossible Burger. And the Impossible Burger is in one of the fast food restaurants, and the other brand, I forget the name of it, is in the other restaurants. And they're all over out there. And people say they taste like real burgers, but you take them, as I have done, and you take them and you peel off the bun, you get rid of the lettuce, tomato, pickles, sauce, rinse them in a sink and taste them butt naked, and they don't taste anything like a hamburger. But people think they're healthier and safer because they are the single most ultra processed foods in the world.
Wow.
I mean, the ingredient list is as long as your arm, and the way they have to jimmy and jerk food products around to make it is just amazing. Do not be fooled. Just because they're non-meat doesn't make them healthy. And that they're in this category. The next category on my list is called lab-grown foods, and there's a bunch of them. Those are the most dominant and predominant. Beyond Meat is the other company. I'm looking at my notes over here. They're made from legumes and grains and nuts, and they're done in a lab. Usually they're giant bioreactors. People now look at stuff and they say, "Oh, that doesn't look real. It had to be made in a lab." I got to tell you, people, making food in a lab is really expensive. Really time consuming. Rough on the environment. It uses a ton of electricity, a ton of water. It is not We just had this eruption a few weeks ago of some VP in technology. He's a nerd at Campbell's, saying that the food is lab grown or something. I forget what the word he used to describe. No, there is no. Oh, he said 3D printed. There are not enough food printers, 3D printers in the world to make more than a few hundred cans of Campbell soup. It's just ridiculous. He was exaggerating. He was trying to make a point. He was overstating. But now people are throwing their Campbell's food in the trash, and grocery stores have got it on half price because some idiot blew his tongue off. Lab grown and 3D printed are two types of food. 3D printing is not a way of making food, by the way, like lab grown. 3D is just a way of packaging it.
Yeah.
I don't know how many of your audience has seen 3D printers, but this is a gadget with a nozzle, and it sprays usually plastic, and you use it to build R2-D2 or Dungeons and Dragons characters. Say again?
Handguns.
Yeah, you can make handguns with them.
Yeah,
but if you put the right paste in it, if you put chocolate in it, if you put like a meat paste in it, you can actually produce edible products.
There's a company in Israel that is, I think the company's called Steak or STK, whatever the hell it's called. And that's what they do. They are meat printers.
Yep. And it's really just an experiment. It may become mainstream someday. But it's really expensive.
Very expensive.
And so stop saying, oh, this is made in a lab somewhere. Making food in a lab is just not practical at this stage. Now, there is manufactured food. It's not a lab. Chicken nuggets are the best example. Chicken nuggets are the scrap that when they kill a chicken, they cut off the breast, they cut off the thighs, they cut off the legs, they cut off the wings, and what's left is the carcass. And there's a bunch of meat still on there, but it's stuck to the bones. And so they scrape it off, and they get little bits and pieces. And what they often do is they use an enzyme called transglutaminase. If it ends in ASE, it's an enzyme. Transglutaminase, and people call it meat glue. Uh-huh. And it's an enzyme, and basically when you put meat into it or spread it on the meat, it helps the meat stick together. It glues. So they take all these bits and pieces and they put it in an extrusion machine with transglutaminase, and it comes out nuggets. They bread it and fry it.
Delicious.
And it's 99 and 9/10% pure chicken, but it's got a little bit of this enzyme in it. Enzymes are just proteins.
Yep.
And in fact, they're absolutely incredibly amazing proteins. And then finally, we'll talk about the 3D printed foods. That's just, believe me, there is just these machines are really expensive, really rare. They may become popular, and they're being used by high-end restaurants to make, funny looking things, make a Chicago hot dog out of buffalo meat or something, whatever. So that's a quick summary. What in preparation for the show, I tried to get all this organized just for you, Greg.
You did great.
Yeah, I sent you, and that was draft, and I've still modified. Tried to send it to you. I'm going to send it to Dr. Blonder, one of my science advisors, my wife, and others. We'll polish it, and I'll publish it on AmazingRibs.com. And I'll start telling people on social media that I bump into when they start saying, "Oh, this is 3D printed." Go read this article, but they won't. But it's a fascinating area, and it's, I think, important to look at it because food is such pleasure and so much fun. One last thought on this subject. If you eat 3 meals a day, times 365 days a year, that's a little over 1,000 meals a year.
Yeah.
If you live to be 80, you're going to eat 800,000 plus meals in your lifetime.
Oof.
800,000. You can eat some Cheetos. It's not going to take a minute off your lifespan. You can have some pepperoni. You just don't want to make a habit of it. I don't think you want to have Cheetos and pepperonis with every meal. But, stop freaking out. Stop worrying. Yes, there's too much ultra-processed food on the store shelves. There's government efforts to reduce it. You'll survive. Look at the riskiest thing you do in your life is not something you do at the dining table. It's getting in your car. Getting in your car is still the most dangerous, risky thing you do, far beyond anything you eat. So stop worrying about your food.
You can go to AmazingRibs.com and get all this great information. You can join the Pitmasters Club as well, where you can get even more great information and be part of a elite club. Meathead, you are the best, and we will see you back, believe it or not, in 2026, where I believe we will start our 748th year of doing interviews about live fire. If you can believe
Greg, I think I've been with you since close to the beginning.
Very close.
And you haven't aged much, I got to tell you. You look good, pal.
Thank you. And you.
And I don't know what's causing that smell that you're complaining about, but maybe you should put your shoes on.
Yeah, well, I'll do that, and we'll see you in 2026. Have a great new year. There he is, Meathead from AmazingRibs.com. Oh, believe me, I know where that smell is coming from, and it rhymes with cats. I don't want to get into it. I don't want to get into it because I'm never going to get off of it. All right, that's Meathead. Again, AmazingRibs.com. Great info there. Hopefully, as Meathead says, you're not falling victim, which I'm sure a lot of you are. Seeing some post on social media, I just disregard. Don't even read it. I don't bother letting it get to me. None of that nonsense. Like, what's the use? People are going to believe what they're going to believe. You can tell them the truth. If they don't want to believe it, they're not going to believe it. All right. You know what everybody believes in? Primo cookers. Fuel efficient. You can achieve low and slow temperatures in these things. You can also get rip-roaring hot. If you want to do that real high-heat grilling, like steaks and other thin cuts. And the best thing about this Primo is that it's oval. So now you can really execute that two-zone setup that you desire. And as we all know, two-zone cooking, the very best way to do it, most important to both professional and backyard cooks alike. Best way to manage a fire and cook with confidence. You can cook 60 different ways on a Primo from a configuration standpoint. All the accessories that you want. You want a pizza grill accessory? They got it. You want a rotisserie accessory? They got it. They got everything. Only sold through dealers. So you're going to have to go in person. You have to visit them. You're going to have to say hi. You're going to have to build a relationship, do all that stuff that makes you uncomfortable these days. Go to primogrill.com, find the dealer near you, and then go. And then pick out the oval that's best for you. What do I say each and every week? Go XL at a minimum. And why not consider the double XL? Give you 25 to 30% more grilling space than the XL, which is, more than most need. But nobody ever got pissed because they bought a grill that was too big. Nobody's like, it's just too big. Nobody's ever said that. All right, Robert Moss is next. Stick around. We'll be right back.
You're listening to the Barbecue Central Show. Howard Stern, Jim Rome, Dan Patrick, and Greg Rempe. The Mountain Rushmore of talk show entertainment. Now, let's get back to the Barbecue Central Show.
We thank Meathead for joining us last segment. This portion of the show being brought to you by Pit Barrel Cooker, the most unbelievable outdoor cooking device on the planet. It's available in 3 sizes. Doesn't matter if you're a beginner or professional. Just add it to the arsenal. You know you want to. PitBarrelCooker.com. A great Christmas gift, by the way. Tell them the show sent you. Why not? My next guest, we know him as the contributing barbecue editor to Southern Living magazine. Also, we know him as a 2023 Barbecue Central Show's guest Hall of Famer. We welcome back our pal and favorite guest of 2025, as voted on by all the listeners, Robert Moss. Robert, I'm going to assume you will take part in this. Would you rather?
I'll do it.
Meathead, very intense the segment before you. But Robert, would you rather have no eyebrows or would you rather have an extra finger?
I mean, the first thing I was thinking, you ended up there was no eyebrows because I can just get fake eyebrows. It's kind of hard to take the sixth finger off. So yeah, no eyebrows all the way.
60% of the YouTube voting public in line with you and me with no eyebrows all the way.
And I'm also with the peanut butter and jelly from last week as well.
Oh, great.
Yeah, 100%. You will die if you eat grilled cheese every day. But
yes.
Yeah. If I had one choice, I would take the grilled cheese. But if I had to eat every day, peanut butter and jelly.
And I think to change it up, and a delicious treat is the grilled peanut butter and jelly. As my man Sam, the cooking guy, says, heat changes thing in all the good ways.
Yeah, absolutely.
Recent barbecue trip to Florida, no less. How about a recap there?
Yeah. So, I'm hitting the road. Got a bunch of barbecue trips planned for 2026. Got a little jump on it last week with a trip down to Florida, headed all the way down the Atlantic coast, all the way down to Miami, and then back up. And Florida's an interesting state. It's not a place people really think about typically when it comes to barbecue. And there is a lot going on in Florida right now. There is a lot of changing of the guard. There is actually an old school Florida barbecue style, which I've written about in the past. That is fading away. A lot of restaurants are closing. Lots of new places coming on the scene, and a very dynamic, interesting scene, particularly the further south you go. And Miami is really hopping these days when it comes to barbecue.
This is a hot button question. And apologies, I'm not trying to be the hot take guy here. Is Florida the South? Like, I know it's South, but I feel like a lot of people do not qualify Florida as being in the South.
Yeah, and I'm not exactly sure why. I mean, I think, part of that, certainly northern Florida, if you've hung out in Tallahassee and places like that, that's South Georgia. That is the South, 100%. Florida historically was very southern, very tied into the South. I think, the further south you get down to Miami, there's obviously a lot of, it starts to sort of blend into the Caribbean, and certainly the barbecue styles are merging into that. So you would think, there's definitely a different culture the further south you go that is not the same as what you might find in, say, Alabama or something like that. But they're definitely linked and connected. So I have no problem calling Florida the South. There's no such thing as a monumental South anyway. Mississippi has long been very different than North Carolina, which is very different than Kentucky. So Florida is just yet another sub-region of the South as far as I'm concerned.
I feel like people want to shit on Florida because if you look at it over the last 50, 60 years, like most people that live there are not from there. If most of Florida was natives, I think that wouldn't even be a topic of discussion.
Yeah, I think that is true. It's definitely a melting pot, if you will. People from all over heading to Florida, but increasingly the entire South is that way. I mean, Charleston, Texas, where I am, I've been here since 2002, and I'm an old timer. There are lots and lots of people coming in. So, and that's true throughout. Texas is the same way. I mean, yes, Texas has been southern for a long time, but there are lots of people moving to Texas from elsewhere, and I think that notion of South versus North is very much rooted back in the 20th century and doesn't really apply as much these days, though we still sort of want to draw that Mason-Dixon line, but that really has not applied since the 19th century.
So we've briefly touched on a potential new evolution of what a Florida barbecue, but you did mention that there was some type of an old guard Florida barbecue style. So what was that original style? Yeah,
for sure. And I think the history of what I call old Florida, which you can think of Florida basically before Disney World showed up. So starting in the early 20th century, 1920s, 1930s, Florida sort of, and the automobile, sort of made Florida this destination where lots of people ended up moving to. It also became a tourist destination at that point, where everyone was going down to take in the sun and everything else, because you could get there on either train or you could get there by car. Lots of migrants coming from other parts of the South ended up in Florida. In fact, if you go around Central Florida, if you go to Tampa in particular, there's a great place, Big John's, Alabama-style barbecue. There's lots of barbecue joints in the sort of 1950s, 1960s that were opened by people coming down from various parts. A lot of Alabama folks moved down to open barbecue restaurants, and they were there basically serving the tourist trade. You get all these little motels, you get all these little restaurants, and barbecue was a big thing. And there's this wonderful old Florida style of places. There's still a few of them left, like Shivers down in Homestead, which is south of Miami. There was a style in the 50s and 60s where, for whatever reason, they wanted it to look like the chuck wagon, Texas Wild West. You have these, faux log walls. You have wagon wheels and, cow heads on the wall and everything else like that. Wonderful place called Shorty's in Miami, which they have announced is still open, but they have announced that it is going to get torn down. These all date back to that era. When there basically it was food for tourists and then the people moving down. Lots of chicken, lots of ribs, and that kind of old school. I sort of think of like a classic old Florida plate would be barbecue ribs, barbecue chicken with usually beans, slaw, maybe garlic bread on the side. That's sort of the classic old Florida. Those restaurants are starting to disappear. There's a classic. You see those restaurants. They have these giant brick pits. They're like brick chimneys. You can see them. They look very much like the pits that you would see at Dreamland or at Archibald's up in Alabama, because they're Alabama style pits. That was all very similar. You see a lot of them around Memphis as well. Those, unfortunately, are starting to fade out, and you can sort of strike off the list. Tom Jenkins in Fort Lauderdale just closed. It's one of those old ones that's been around for a while. The Jenkins, unrelated, a different Jenkins barbecue chain in Jacksonville closed. One by one, they're shutting down. And so that's the old school. It's disappearing, and it's being replaced by, we can talk about in a minute, but it's being replaced by what I call the new Florida style of barbecue.
So what's the new Florida style like? And does it pay homage to the old style at all?
I don't think it pays much homage at all to the old style. There's no nods to it really that I see. What I really see it as is it's a marrying of Texas. So you take the Texas craft barbecue style, your brisket, your ribs, your Texas shredded, your sausage, all that kind of stuff. You drop it into Florida, but then you give it a Florida accent. And what that really means is a Caribbean accent. So you see now lots of Caribbean inflected versions of the Texas Trinity, which is, putting various fruits and various types of Caribbean type flavors into the glazes that you would put on brisket, ribs, etc. Putting I sort of think right now the iconic South Florida barbecue item is a brisket empanada. So you take an empanada, which is sort of like a deep fried turnover type thing, stuff it full of brisket and cheese, and it's got Texas and you got Florida, or you got the Caribbean mixed together. You see lots of fried plantains as a side dish. You see lots of rice and beans as a side dish. So it's really a melding of the two cultures that have sort of assimilated into Florida. But no, it doesn't really pay much of a glance at all at the old school as far as I can tell. Pits are totally different. You no longer see the big brick pits like you used to. It's all offset smokers and that type of thing. Very much inspired by Texas. But then you start seeing places like Tropical Smokehouse in West Palm Beach that's putting on mahi and all kinds of great fish on the pit and doing some really, really interesting things. So it is definitely a new fusion that is inspired from various different places that sort of converge, if you will, in the south of Florida.
So if we're looking Central Florida and then south, and then the further south you get, the heavier it gets, the Cuban influence.
Yeah.
Is there a Cuban style of barbecue or no?
Well, there's the cajachina and there's other. I mean, those are Cuban so much as Puerto Rican. It's definitely Caribbean. You don't really see that merging in so much as the various flavors that you get that's sort of added to it. So not really picking up so much on that kind of lechon or the roast pig tradition. At least I don't see that. I think there's a little bit of that going on, but it's much more, I think, taking the 20th or 21st century craft barbecue aesthetic and then throwing in some Caribbean flavors to it.
Barbecue sauce debate. Should barbecue sauce be served on the meat in a restaurant or on the side in a restaurant?
Well, I would say, do it how you want. I don't necessarily think one is right or wrong.
Is that directed to the restaurant operator or the person coming in and buying the food?
Well, that's a good question. I sort of feel like you take the restaurant on whatever its style is. And so I am on the record of saying that there's a trope in barbecue that, good barbecue or good meat, good smoked meat doesn't need sauce, which I think is silly. And it is, I'm not even sure where that idea comes from. But if you believe that, then you basically rule out all of the Carolinas where, you walk into a barbecue joint, there's sauce on the meat. You're not going to get, chopped pork in Lexington, North Carolina that isn't already fully dressed with sauce. Same thing
but
with
it's
Memphis,
vinegar sauce. It's not thick Kansas City-based sticky sweet sauce.
Well, that's true. It's a different flavor of sauce, but that you got to take it on its own terms. Because if you go and just want a bunch of smoked pork shoulders chopped in their sauce, that's not really, taking North Carolina barbecue on its own terms. But I would consider that definitely a sauce. And if you go to Piedmont, it's got, tomato, it's got a little ketchup, it's got a little sugar in it. So it's definitely a sauced barbecue. If you go to Kansas City, at least you go to an old school Kansas City place, that's going to come out drenched in thick brown sweet sauce. I don't think it's any attempt to cover up inferior meat. It's just the way they serve it. And that's the way. If I'm in Kansas City, that's how I'll do it. Now, if I'm in Texas, I'll let them pile it on the butcher paper and with no salt or no sauce on it, and add it myself later.
Yeah. So this is my hot take. Sauce on the meat means the meat sucks, and you're covering it up. Now, after you've said what you've said, I'm going to step back a little bit. And so in my mind, I can delineate. So I agree with the Texas stuff. But I'm going to apply that to every restaurant, except if I'm going into the Carolinas and there's a vinegar dressing on it. I'm not even going to say sauce, vinegar dressing. They've chopped it up. They've thrown the vinegar stuff around in there, and now it's going on a piece of bread or whatever the hell the traditional way of serving it is. In my mind, I can get over that mental hurdle. That's not sauce. But everything else that looks like sauce, if I'm in a restaurant, give me the meat. Let me taste it first. If you have really great sauce, you leave it on the table. I will add it at that point to see if there's a complement, to see if it's competing with the meat for some reason, either a good or bad way. But I feel like if it's coming out with sauce, it's suspect right off the bat. They know they're either cutting a corner somewhere and they're trying to hide it by putting on a probably cost cheap but taste good sauce in order to get away with it.
So what you think is they're cooking and they've got the meat and it comes off and they're like, wow, this stuff is just not good. Let's cover up a bunch of sauce and send it out because this really sucks.
Yes.
They know their meat is terrible. They aren't putting sauce on it because that's how their granddaddy did it. They're doing it because they know that their meat is inferior.
And this is a business, and barbecue's popular, and we have barbecue on the sign, so that means people will stream in. But if the meat sucks, the people will not continue to stream in, and they will talk shit on Yelp and Google review. So let's get away with it by putting on a sauce that's good.
Well, it's an interesting theory. Not sure I buy into it. I think it's much more that the restaurant has their style. It's more determined by the way they sort of learned it, et cetera. And the sauce is not a decision made later down the road after evaluating the quality of the meat. I think it's just the way they do it.
Tell me about the truth in barbecue law.
The one in South Carolina, I assume you're talking about. This is the one that's sort of I'll say mythical, the sort of slippery truth in barbecue law. It's something I've read a lot about over the years, or read occasionally about. You see people mention that there's a truth in barbecue law in South Carolina. You'll sometimes see it phrased as you have to you have to disclose whether you're cooking on wood or not, and you'll go to jail if you don't. You had to do all this kind of stuff. So there's a little bit of truth to it. So I dug into it actually for a recent issue of the Robert F. Moss newsletter. It dates back to the 1980s, back actually when I was in high school. 1986, a guy named John Bubber Snow, that's Bubber Snow, one of the South Carolina legislators from Hemingway, South Carolina, introduced a bill, and I went and tracked down and found the actual bill in the South Carolina State House to call they wouldn't actually call the Truth in Barbecue bill. It has a very long name, like most of them do. It ended up getting nicknamed the Truth in Barbecue bill. So basically, what it said was the South Carolina State Department of Agriculture had to print all these 4 different decals. Their restaurants would display on their windows or their door, indicating what type of barbecue they served. And there's basically combinations of, was it whole hog or was it not, parts of the pig. So those are 2 options. And then was it cooked on wood or was it cooked on something else? So with those 2 options, you multiply them together, you get 4, which I think is interesting because the law basically says for barbecue, it's going to be pork, of course. This is South Carolina. It's just, is it a whole hog or is it not? And this was at a time when a lot of the South Carolina places were switching over from wood to gas pits, and it is supposed to be able to specify that. So that got passed in 1986, got picked up in the press, and got people made a lot of fun of it, and going whole hog and all that kind of stuff. Called it pork barrel politics and all those good things. But the governor signed it into law in 1986. Now I have been trying, and I put it in the newsletter. I'm going to put it out here on the podcast today. If anybody has seen one of these decals, because I've never seen one, whether it's whole hog cooked on wood, whole hog parts cooked on something other than wood, which being gas, I would love to see them. I never did see them, but apparently that law was passed. I don't know if it was ever enforced. There was actually in the law a provision that said if you posted the wrong sign, like if you said you were cooking on wood and you weren't, you were subject to a misdemeanor and a fine. Oh. However, the law was clearly from the beginning optional. No one had to display the stickers or anything like that. It was just a decal they printed as sort of a marketing thing. It sort of made a little news in 1986, disappeared largely without a trace. In 1992, for whatever reason, I've never been figured out why, Bubber Snow passed another law rescinding it. So he got an act passed through, signed by the governor, and as of 1992, it was no longer in effect. And I've never seen a decal since then. But we did have briefly a Truth in Barbecue law in South Carolina where restaurants at least could, if they wanted to, post an official designation of, are we cooking whole hog? Are we cooking on wood? Are we cooking on gas? Or what exactly are we doing here?
And no infractions that made the police blotter.
I have never been able to find a case of anyone being charged. I've never seen the stickers. I would assume that the Department of Agriculture actually printed up the decals, but I've never found one. So I'm hoping somebody's got somewhere one of these decals in their attic or something that they can send my way, but I've not seen one yet.
Well, if you know or you're in possession of these, please get in touch with me or get in touch with Robert. You can find Robert at robertfmoss.com. By the way, while you're there, make sure you're subscribing to the Q Sheet and the newsletter and all that fun stuff because they're great reads and a wealth of information. Robert, always appreciate the time. I thank you for really probably what is the best recurring segment in 2025, and I'm just telling you that as the host and as somebody who can appreciate content and look forward to doing it again next year. Always appreciate it. Thanks so much.
Got lots to talk about 2026. Looking forward to it. Thanks,
all right,
Greg.
There he is, Robert Moss, right there. If you didn't learn one thing from Robert Moss this year, you weren't listening. That's how I know. If you weren't listening, or if you didn't learn, you weren't listening. There was so much stuff. Plus, we were preempted for the first 4 months by the Michelin star unraveling that we talked about. And then we got into classic barbecue sides and where they came from and how they've evolved over the years. Come on, this guy's the best. Sorry to everybody else that's a regular guest. Nobody's giving more educational value and entertainment than Robert Moss. A beauty. Connie Rempe saying Robert Moss, the greatest. Yes, the GOAT. He could go in again in the Barbecue Central Show's Guest Hall of Fame next year. If somebody nominated him, we could potentially put him in class of 23 and class of 26. How about that? It could happen. I mean, it probably won't happen. It could happen. All right, let's wrap the first hour. Stick around. Be right back.
You're listening to the Barbecue Central Show. continuing to produce incredibly mediocre content in an exceptionally professional way. You're listening and watching the Barbecue Central Show. Once again, here's your host, Greg Rempe.
Thank you to Robert Moss for joining us last segment. We talked about Florida. We got a little history lesson on Florida barbecue and what the Florida barbecue style used to be in the old ways. Now there's a new way that's coming up, and neither are playing off of each other anymore. We learned about a law in the Carolinas that also involves stickers. So if you have those stickers, get in touch with me or get in touch with Robert so he can see those. Or give them to him. Can you imagine? He's so happy. We are pointing to the second hour. Why not refresh your libations? We'll see you right back. Stick around.